Welcome back, I'm Ren from Bluewood Gaming, and I'm finally doing a review of Dirt 4. Now I know that this is coming out a bit late, but I've been going through and getting gold on every single championship in the campaign, and that took a little bit because there's a lot to the campaign. I'll get to that here in a little bit, but let's get right into it, starting with the graphics. And there's not really much to say here. They're trying to be super realistic, and if you played anything like Gran Turismo or Drive Club or any of the recent Forza games, pretty much any recent realistic racer, and you'll know what this looks like. And you can see it in the background. It looks really, really good. The only downside that I've seen to the graphics is that when you're playing Land Rush, which is a mode that uses specific like Baja race style trucks to go around a course, when you go around the first couple of corners in a Land Rush event, you will get noticeable frame drops down to I've gotten them down to about 15 frames per second. It's normally down to about 20. It's not like game breaking. You can still race, you can still do fine, but it is very noticeable, and later on in the video you will see when that happens. When I go around some of the first few corners, I will leave that in specifically, so look for that. Besides that, like I said, the graphics all look really great. I played this on a PS4, so I don't exactly know how the scaling works on PC. I don't know if when you put it down to very low settings, if it still looks as amazing, but I would guess with this being on a regular PlayStation 4 that these are pretty close to the low-end graphics that you are seeing. So with that finished, let's move on to sound. And once again, these are all very, very well done, although Codemasters has shown that they've been able to do really great sounds for a while now with the Dirt games. And I don't know if any of these sounds are taken from their previous games, such as Dirt 3 or Dirt Rally, but they all sound pretty much perfect. I have not heard anything in the general car sounds that sound too outrageous. Sometimes when you're getting something like your brakes messing up, or you break something on your engine, sometimes the braking sounds are a bit out of place, but that's pretty much a small little nitpick, if you could even call it that. So let's move on to voice, and the only voices that you're really going to be hearing are the announcer voice, the narrator voice in the campaign, and then the voices of the different people while you're driving. Things such as your co-driver when you're doing rally events, and then things such as the spotter when you're doing rally cross events. Those all sound really great. The only thing is, with the rally voice, you can occasionally hear where it's being stitched together into one solid track. You can hear some of the spots where the person, where the sound actually ends for one and then starts up for the next thing that the person says, and that's, again, just a small little nitpick, but it's noticeable when it happens, and that's pretty much the only downside to the sound, or to the voice. The actual music in the game, all of it is copyrighted, so you're not going to hear it in this video, but there is supposedly a pretty good selection of different songs that you're going to be hearing in this. The problem is, I keep hearing like the same 4 over and over and over again, and very rarely do I hear anything that is not part of those 4 songs. So while there is a good selection, it might end up being like how I have it, where you just hear the same things over and over and over and over again. And for me, I just turn the sounds down, although then again, I'm used to turning down copyright music anyways. And now with music and sound finish, let's move on to the story, and this is where it gets a little bit different. This time around, there's a very open-ended story. It starts off with giving you the choice to go between rally events, land rush, rally cross, and historical rally events. You can choose any. You can choose a championship from any of those four, and you can go back and forth between those four whenever you want. You just have to finish championship up before you switch between the different ones, and essentially just start off racing for other teams until you get enough money to buy a car. Then you can enter championships with that car, and you get to develop your own team. You get to hire your own engineers, your own PR person, who gets to get sponsorships, which you get to choose between, and you have to you have to get more sponsorships because they only last for a specific number of championships, and you have to hire more engineers because they only last for a specific number of championships. And then on top of that, you have to buy more cars because one car will not get you through the entire game. And you just go back and forth between different championships. They get longer and a bit more difficult as you go on, but once again, you get to choose which order you do all of them in. Then while you're doing all that, you also level up your facilities. Things such as a lounge to let your engineers just lounge around and not develop negative traits. There's also you have to buy more garage space. There's a bunch of different facilities that you buy to make your company or your racing brand better, and you just keep going through all that. Then once you have finished the final championship for Rally Cross, and Land Rush, then you can go to the Triple Crown Championship. And that is the big end championship at the end of the game. You go and do a whole ton of races. I think you do 30 different rally events, almost 30 different rally cross races, and then I think 12 or so land rush races. And then once you finish with that, well, then you're done with the campaign. But the game is not finished, because once you're finished with the campaign, or pretty much at any time really, you can go into the competitive races, which are weekly, monthly, daily, weekly, and monthly events, where everybody goes into a race for the first time. There is no restarts here. You go and you get the best time that you possibly can on this course, and then at the end of the time, depending on how you did compared to everybody else, you'll get a set amount of credits. And then if you get bored of doing the competitive events, there is multiplayer, which there seems to be a good number of people playing multiplayer, but there isn't really anything that I want to join. I only joined one multiplayer event just to see how it went, and it went fine. But that's not really a big part of the game. And then after that, another mode is free play, which is actually one of the more interesting modes. In free play, you get to set up your own championship, and you get to decide where you're being where you're racing, what you're racing, all the different things set up for that race, and then you get to choose the race track. Now, I say choose it. If you're doing rally events, you don't actually choose a named track like in previous games like Dirt Rally. This time around, they made a procedural generation engine for rally events, and that is used for most of the events that you will play in the game. And this gives you a seemingly endless amount of content. The problem is the races or the rallies that this engine pops out kind of just blend together. And I'm not talking about like the different areas blending together. The races that are supposed to be in Australia feel different than the races that are in Europe or in America. But all of the Australian maps kind of blend together, and that's really the big downside to this procedural generation that they do in this game. It doesn't really give any feeling to all the different rallies. They all feel lifeless, kind of. Even though you see all the people on the edges of them, it feels like there was no real work put into designing each of these races, and that's because there wasn't. It was all procedurally generated, and while they do go together nicely, they just don't feel the same as rallies did in previous Dirt games. And pretty much every single downside to the game can be ignored except for this one. This one is kind of a put-off for a lot of people, but getting into my final thoughts on it, this procedural generation is not something that I would say is a deal breaker, but I would tell people if they're looking at Dirt 4 and they have not played Dirt Rally, I would recommend that you go pick up Dirt Rally. But if you played Dirt Rally or you played Dirt 3, well, if you played Dirt 3, I still recommend picking up Dirt Rally, but if you played Dirt Rally, I still recommend picking up this game. There is still enough here that is enjoyable for long enough that I think that it is worth it to pick it up. And doing the daily, weekly, and monthly competitive events will help you for quite a while to get some enjoyment out of this. But if you haven't played Dirt Rally yet, I recommend picking up Dirt Rally over this. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a great racing game that gets bought down by just that one simple thing of having procedurally generated races. I really hope that the next one goes back to having the handcrafted rallies and the handcrafted races that the previous Dirt games had, but we will just have to see. So that has been it for my review of Dirt. Specifically Dirt 4. My next video should be a review of Black Desert Online. I'm taking a look at an MMO. Then after that, I have a few more reviews lined up, but we will just have to see. So as always, remember, I'm Riding from Blue to Gaming. I'll see you guys in the next one.